Now, the British Prime Minister Theresa May begins a tour of European capitals today to ask for improvements to her Brexit plan after calling off a parliamentary vote on the deal.
Well, joining us with that story and everything else this morning is Ellen Gunning, Director of the Irish Academy of Public Relations.
But before we chat to Ellen, I'm joined on the line now by the Vice President of the European Parliament, Mairead McGuinness, MEP. Good morning, Mairead. Thank you very much for taking our call. As we've just said there, Mrs May is going to be canvassing EU leaders today and tomorrow for help, for concessions. I suppose the questions for us are, is she going to get them? And more importantly, what could they be? Is there any possibility that the EU would sacrifice Irish interests for the greater EU good to get a deal?
Well, first of all, the word that the Prime Minister is using is reassurances. Now, the difficulty I had when I followed the debate yesterday is that what would reassure one member of the House of Commons would terrify another. So I'm not so sure that we could give that basket of reassurances that is required to get the vote over the line in the House of Commons. But on the other hand, it is fair to say that the Prime Minister will get a hearing. Because I think the European Union wants this issue to be settled one way or another. And there is a deal on the table. We have repeated, as have many colleagues, that the withdrawal agreement is not up for renegotiation. So when you ask me that question about sacrificing Ireland, I think that is a question that is not on the table, because yesterday in the European Parliament, my colleagues were adamant that our commitment on the border issue is a European Union commitment. It isn't just for Ireland and about Ireland. It is much bigger than that. So she'll get a hearing, but again, I'm not so sure that she will find all of the solutions at an EU level. I think the problems are more internal in the United Kingdom. And I think that was very evident yesterday with the debate and indeed the exchanges in the House of Commons, which were dramatic to say the least and probably unprecedented, that a vote would be pulled and an effort made to, as she said, to find reassurances. And I think her language was important. She didn't say to renegotiate. She said to find reassurances.
Oh, OK. I'm sure you followed that debate very carefully, and I'm also sure that you picked up on her comments, particularly the quote about businesses operating across the border, people living their lives across the border and crossing it every day. They do not want to return to a hard border. And if this House, i.e. the Westminster, cares about preserving our union, it must listen to those people, because our union will only endure with their consent. Now, that's the first time that a senior politician has raised the spectre of a united Ireland. Our politicians have been very careful not to do it, and she's basically telling them a hard border could force or lead to a united Ireland. Now, she's openly saying it. We're not entirely sure whether it's a warning shot across the bows. Is she trying to scare the DUP? Or and given that this is your area, you're from a border county, is this a very insightful analysis of what the situation in Northern Ireland actually is at the moment?
Well, I think she's stating the obvious. I mean, we all know that the Good Friday Agreement has within its articles the issue of consent. So I don't think she was stating anything unusual, nor do I think she was using it as a threat. I mean, I think those days are long over. I'm not so sure that people in the House of Commons will have even heard what she said, because I felt there was such an atmosphere of discord in the House of Commons that a lot of the detail would have been lost in that debate. So I thought it was interesting what she said. I don't think it's going to settle our core issue, which is about a timing problem now. The UK leaves at the end of March unless something changes to move that date along, and I wouldn't doubt that might happen, but it's certainly not on the cards now. The next few days will be crucial, but to go back to the core issue here, and this is my big concern, that there is an unusual alliance of parties in the House of Commons against the deal. So you have people who are absolutely hard Brexiteers voting the same way as those who absolutely want the UK to remain in the European Union. So how do you reconcile those two sides that are now voting against this deal for very different reasons? Can there be sufficient or a large enough blanket of reassurance to deal with those? And from what I heard particularly from the hard Brexiteers, that they do not even want to be reassured. They want out. They have no thought or concern about the consequences of a crash out. In fact, some of them seem to relish the idea of it. So we all know that's not a good idea from a European point of view, or indeed from a UK perspective.
OK. Mairead McGuinness, thank you very much indeed.
Well, Ellen, you were watching, as I was, events as they unfolded in the House of Commons yesterday. It was quite incredible. It was the lesser of two humiliations for Theresa May. She has bought herself time. But what else has she managed, do you think, to secure at this stage? What is the plan here?
I think she's an amazing woman that she's still standing. I don't know how she gets out of bed in the morning, because she constantly seems to be faced with these amazing challenges, and she keeps finding wriggle room. And she found her wriggle room yesterday. And the wriggle room was postpone the vote because I'm not going to win it. I'm going to lose it by a major majority. And she called that straight. And I'm not sure if she's going to bring the vote back again. Pre-Christmas, I think she'll probably wait until after Christmas and maybe let people cool a little bit. What she seems to be doing, her option that she's gone for, seems to be that she'll go back to the EU and she'll seek clarification, reassurance. The issue that she's identified, as far as I can see, is the backstop, and the fact that there is a nervousness that the backstop will become permanent. And it seems that she's going back to get a clarification on that it cannot be permanent. Now, it's an issue, an interesting one, because I'm not sure that the EU...
isn't it? It's just going to be words. It's no substantive changes to that withdrawal agreement.
No substantive changes.
And it does seem, if you were listening to all of those who opposed the deal, that it was substantive changes and not reassurances that they were looking for. And they're not going to get that.
I don't think she's going to get enough, because I don't think the EU can actually guarantee her that the backstop will be temporary, because the whole idea of the backstop is, in the absence of a negotiated agreement, the backstop comes into place. So it is temporary until there's a negotiated agreement, but you can't say how long it will take to get a negotiated agreement. I'm not sure. I think it's bought her time. I'm not sure that it's bought her a solution.
Ellen, what about those remarks that she made about the prospect of a united Ireland? We actually have those comments. We can take them now. We have a clip of it.
Businesses operate across that border. People live their lives crossing and recrossing it every day. I've been there and spoken to some of those people. They do not want their everyday lives to change as a result of the decision we have taken. They do not want a return to our hard border. And if this House cares about preserving our union, it must listen to those people, because our union will only endure with their consent.
Reports in our press this morning say that senior government officials here were astonished by that, because they've been absolutely walking on eggshells not to make any allusion to that whatsoever.
And yet what she said was it fits for a British Prime Minister. She's elected as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. And what she's saying in the House of Commons is, if the focus is on preserving the Union, then you must have the consent of the people to preserve the Union. I think the one thing she's been very consistent about is that she really gets the whole piece in Ireland, and she gets the issue of no border, no hard border, but she has a terribly hard job selling it. And I think that was her way of trying to flip the coin a little and saying, not so much you're facing into a united Ireland as, if it really is about the preservation of the Union, then you need to look again, because the border will not happen. It's a very interesting take on it.
Also interesting yesterday was to watch Jeremy Corbyn and Labour's response on this, where he basically said, find a solution or you must go. And yet, once again, doesn't actually hit the red button himself and try and force either a leadership change or try and force a general election. Are they just standing back because they want to ultimately just watch the Conservative Party implode itself?
I think he's actually afraid that if he calls a vote of no confidence, he will either force the Conservatives to vote confidence in her because they don't want somebody else to bring her down, or he genuinely doesn't know if he wins the vote, what happens then. I think he's not prepared to win the vote. So I think he's still playing games. I think his preference would be to keep applying the pressure and allow the Conservatives to bring her down. It's very interesting because the number of options she's left with are very, very limited. It's hard to know where she goes from here.
Most of them end up with her losing her job.
All of them, I think, end up with her losing her job. So really the choice from her point of view is, when does she lose her job? So the European Court of Justice decision that Britain could decide that it will pull back from Brexit, I thought was fascinating. They say it needs a democratic decision, but she has the option to say, well, actually what I will do is I will pull back from the Brexit deal entirely because the House of Commons will not ratify it. I will step down as Prime Minister and allow somebody else to negotiate the deal.
Was yesterday just
an interesting option?
One giant leap towards the UK ultimately just crashing out of the EU, do you think? given the timeline here?
It's very hard to tell, because the other thing that started to percolate yesterday and the day before was this idea of a referendum again. Now, that's been around for a long time. But the referendum, when people spoke about it previously, they were talking about give the people in the UK an option to vote to come back into Europe and say we made a mistake. The new take on the referendum is that Theresa May might actually offer people the option to either vote for her deal or no deal. And that's very interesting. I don't know if she has enough time to do it, but I think it would put the EU in an awful position, because if the UK decided that they were to have a referendum on this deal, the EU would have to find a way to let them, because we are a democracy.
All right, look, we'll be covering the story, I imagine, right throughout the week. Ellen, thank you as always.
Thank you.
Plenty more to come on the programme. We'll be back after this short break.